Hi, this is Tim Fytek on August 4th talking with Jon Nelson, who knew a musician who played in the Paul Whiteman Band. And let's hear it from Jon.
Okay, yeah. I'm a trombone player, and in the 1970s, I was looking for a trombone teacher, being young at the time, and I wanted to have a really good trombone teacher, and it was recommended that I look up a gentleman in Burbank by the name of Larry Collins. And so I did that, and I studied with him for about 3 years, as I recall, up until 1979. And Mr. Collins was born in Australia. He told me he had a long history of playing in marching bands and concert bands and things like that in Australia, and he would always talk about how they didn't carry on that tradition here in America the way that they did in Australia. He came to the United States, and he started working with Paul Whiteman's band in 1929, just in time to do the King of Jazz movie. He sat next to Wilbur Hall and Bill Rank in the movie, and you can see him doing it right there.
Okay, and you said that he mentioned about the sections practicing. Tell me a little
Correct.
bit about that.
Yeah. Well, in 1978, Mr. Collins and I went to see Wilbur Hall, who was one of the other trombone players in the Whiteman Band at that time. And Wilbur Hall was living in Riverside. I don't know if it was his home or his son's home, but Wilbur Hall at that time was 86 years old, still an active performer, and very gracious, very entertaining character. And the two of them were talking about some of the rehearsals that the trombone section would do, and I was very interested in that, being a trombone player. And they said that they would rehearse on weekends when they weren't playing, sometimes as long as 5, 6, 7 hours even, on Saturdays and Sundays, if they didn't have a place to play that particular night, which is not very often the case because the Whiteman Band had a pretty tight schedule of performances to play at, places to play at. And they had an incredibly difficult trombone book, which I did not actually see, but I know people that have seen it and played it in the Paul Whiteman Reunion Band in 1984. And it's incredibly difficult. And he said that the trombone section would just rehearse and rehearse and rehearse just by themselves over and over again. And also he mentioned that there was a piece of music, Mr. Collins mentioned this actually, not Wilbur Hall, that there was a saxophone piece that they worked on in which involved the whole reed section of the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, where everybody was doing some incredibly fleet-fingered and fast-tonguing, double-tonguing passage work, and they worked on that for hour after hour after hour. An incredibly difficult piece, which I don't believe they ever recorded, and I don't know the name of the piece.
And Collins, of course, is not just, besides being on film in The King of Jazz, this guy has other verification of being in the Whiteman Band, because you said he had a large collection of memorabilia, and you saw a picture of him with Joe Venuti and Eddie Lang. Tell me what the picture looked like.
Okay, well, there are several pictures. He showed me, one of the pictures he showed me, and this is in a notebook about a couple of inches thick, big thick notebook. Some of them were actually film clippings and billings and things like that, but they're also snapshots of different photographs. And one of the photographs was of the trombone section that I just mentioned. And another photograph in there was of him and Joe Venuti and Eddie Lang. And I don't recall the details other than that. I believe that there was a lamp there or something that resembled a lamp. And they didn't have their instruments. Mr. Collins was in the center, and Eddie Lang was on his left, and Joe Venuti was on his right.
Do you remember any of the other pictures? You said that there was that one, and you said a picture of the trombone section. Were there any other Whiteman pictures?
There was the traditional photograph of the 1928 Whiteman Band, which you have, and I think most people have. Yes. It shows Bix in the back with a big grin on his face and the mustache. He had that. He had that photograph.
Original?
The original.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so I recall that, and I recall seeing a couple of other pictures of the Whiteman Band, which may have been stills from the movie.
Okay. And now I'd like to ask you, Mr. Collins knew Bix, and he had some reminiscence about Bix. I'd like you to tell about that.
He didn't know Bix as well as some of the other musicians in the band, because Mr. Collins played with Whiteman just for a period of a couple of months in 1929, just in time to do the King of Jazz movie. He replaced Boyce Cullen, who was the regular trombonist at that time, who took sick and eventually died. And what happened was he knew Bix to the point where he didn't respect his work habits as a musician because he was drinking all the time. He was drinking pretty heavily at the time. And I believe this is before he actually had his breakdown.
Okay.
Now, when did he have the breakdown? He had the breakdown in January, did he not? Or
January 29.
29. Okay, so it would have been after. It would have been after then. Okay, yeah, I stand corrected. All right, so it would have been afterwards. But he recalled Beiderbecke as actually, in terms of musical quality, he said that he was a good reader. He said he could read all the parts without any difficulty, and
so he'd progressed to that point.
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
said he couldn't read and stuff. He had gotten to that point.
Oh yeah, that was in 29.
That.
Yeah, that was in 29,
okay.
And it's known that Bix was a fairly solid reader by 1928, but by 29 he was apparently just about as good as anybody else in the band.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.